about 95% of the companies that I've spoken to that are claiming they're AI driven aren't.
Welcome back to The Unknowns, and today we're going to talk about the unknowns of the internets, the interwebs. Our guest today is Neil Hoyne, who's the director of strategy for a very small startup called Google. He's also a published author, and he wrote Converted, the data-driven way to win customer hearts. Neil, thanks so much for joining us.
Hey, Charlie, thanks for having me.
You're almost a futurist. Is that an accurate description of what your job is?
I mean, that is as much as I can ground it in reality. I'd love to go to companies and say, this is what's going to happen in 5 years. And there's no accountability for that, because especially when you're working with boards, you're like, and this will happen long in the future.
We're facing some really big, interesting topics, from AI to video being created by AI to deepfakes. What sort of keeps you up at night? Is there anything that's you're worried about?
I'm not worried about it, because over the years I've learned to know a lot of the engineers and people behind these products and the intentions that they have and what they're trying to build. And this is just with companies across the valley where people take a lot of pride in building products that are great. And I think our imagination's captured by how technology can be abused. The most interesting metaphor that I've heard for it is one of my good friends, Gopi, equates it very similar to people working with fire, where you look at it and you're like, oh, fire's great. It can cook us food. It can keep us warm. And then someone invariably probably burned down their cave. And as a society, what happened? Well, we started figuring out flammability standards. We started developing fire departments. You go into, conference halls with hundreds of people and be like, well, what about fire? And they have sprinklers overhead. But those things probably weren't envisioned at the same time mankind found fire.
You had a post about AI washing, like greenwashing, that people are out there claiming this is powered by AI when it may just be a fancy Excel
Everything's AI now.
Spiffy trick, right? So what is AI? Like, how would we know it when we see it?
First, it's hard to find things that are not AI. Oral-B has a toothbrush at Costco that's powered by AI. And so it opens up these goals where investors raise their hands and they say, look, I see new opportunities if only you use AI. And one of the stories is a good friend of mine is, building a gaming company, a mobile game. And his investors came to him and said, look, people are willing to pay you more money if you say you're using AI. And he had the same question that we're wrestling with, which is, well, but I'm not. And it's like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's proprietary. It's a black box. It's very complicated. Connect to OpenAI through their API, and then you can say you're an AI company. And this is just where I worry about those business hype cycles, where somebody sees an opportunity, they start connecting the dots about what's possible. And then you see all this money flood in, this fear of missing out. I need to invest in AI companies if this is the future. And so it's very difficult to distinguish. I say broadly, about 95% of the companies that I've spoken to that are claiming they're AI driven aren't.
Well, just for complete transparency, you and I doing this interview are not AI. Is that correct?
We are not AI.
Okay, but if we
Wait,
were...
Isn't that what AI would say?
Yeah, right, that's what they would say.
Never admit, if you're going to pass a Turing test, you must be on at all times.
But that being said, it's plausible at some point that this interview or any other interview would be the AI versions of ourselves.
I mean, take email as an example. There's some platforms out there now that offer and say, I'm going to take your email content and I'm going to rewrite it to make you more articulate and more persuasive. Grammarly is one of those such platforms. And then on the other side, you have AI tools that say, we're going to take your inbox and simplify it down so it only gives you the bullet points of every email. And so you have people almost creating all this work in between to be like, can't you just call somebody up and say, this is what I need? And so it is possible that what I would hope it does is it makes people more productive to say, look, this is what Neil's really trying to say, Charlie. This is what you really need to decide. And it would be great if you and I could just talk to be like, can we do this? And you're like, no, I hate it. Instead of having to code around to it, well, how was your weekend? I hope everything's going well. Did you look at the strategy deck? Probably not. And so there is just a lot of business communications that maybe AI can help streamline.
So you still believe in the power of picking up the phone and calling somebody?
Absolutely. I believe in the power of sending paper letters, believe it or not, because it's different. When it's something different, you get to engage people in ways that's more memorable than something that's commoditized. I get on LinkedIn, I'll get several hundred messages a week. And LinkedIn offers AI-based suggestions about how to reach out. One of them is, hey, Neil, it's been a long time since we've connected. How have you been? And I have at least 100 of those every week from people. And it's just, all right, you sent me the equivalent of a blank message where you couldn't spend the time to think through ideas.
I think most businesses and most boardrooms are filled with people like, we got to figure out AI. You know, it would be imprudent for us not to, but they don't know what they don't know.
The most common question I hear is, what should our AI strategy be? Makes sense, right? AI is a big deal. We need a strategy to go forward. The best companies I have the experience working with frame it a different way. They say, how can AI accelerate our existing strategy? We understand our company. We understand the value you're bringing to consumers. Can we use, and it doesn't have to be limited to AI, but any technology. How does AI help us get there sooner, faster, maybe cheaper, maybe better? How can we better service our customers, deliver better products? When it's framed in that context, then all of a sudden everybody can come around the table. It's not saying, I don't understand AI, so we need to hire a whole bunch of technology consultants. It's saying, no, I understand my business. I understand my business challenges, what we want to do. Now can all these smart technical people, these smart data people, tell me how their toys help contribute to that goal or not? But now they can drive the questions. Now they can maintain control of their strategy because they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, as opposed to all of a sudden saying, what we've been doing for the past couple of decades, no, throw that away. We need to be like that toothbrush, AI first. No, you were a successful toothbrush. Figure out if AI can help you. Don't let AI say you have to tear up your whole playbook and go do something else. That's where companies struggle because they're losing control. If you say, hey, we tried this week and it was a marginal investment and we learned these things even though it didn't work, that's a lot more palatable for most organizations. And that's how you transform.
At one point, there were buggy whip manufacturers who did booming business and then suddenly they didn't. What do you tell young designers and videographers and people who look at AI as collaborative at this point, but could they be replaced?
I think you can make the case for almost any industry that software developers to actually, the New York Times had a piece a couple weeks ago saying, hey, could AI replace a CEO? Given how much a CEO costs, could we replace him? And I think then you go down this path where you're like, AI can do anything. AI can solve anything that human beings can solve. And I go back to say, the foundation of AI is to look at the works that have already been created by mankind. They index the videos that have already been made, the music that's already been made. That genuine spirit of innovation comes from people, which means I really go to those people and I say, no, those unique talents you have that you want to nurture are still going to be valuable. What AI will help is, here's something that looks like what everybody expects and what everybody does. The mass market stuff that already, as you know, ad agencies can crank out. If we don't really want to build a good brand, we just do the same thing everybody else is doing. And it follows those trends. I think AI will help there. But I think that genuine idea of creation, of innovation, or for a CEO, for the direction a company should go, I don't think those are replaceable by technology.
Well, that leads to another pickle that we have to solve in this country is sort of the divisiveness. We seem to be always angry on both sides or three sides or four sides. How do we approach that? How do we approach that with all the tools we have, with the ability to be broadcasters ourselves? How do we find commonality, even though we differ?
I wish I had a solution for it. I wish I had a solution that a lot of people say we need to adjust algorithms, we need to adjust products and platforms, we need to use regulation. My personal opinion on it is that we actually need to look at how we take technology out of the picture. And so I spend a lot of time in California as much as I do in other parts. I just spent a couple weeks out in Tennessee with people that have very different political views and religious views than my own. But it's oftentimes in engaging with those conversations, you understand more commonalities than what you would think simply through media clips. And so part of it, I think, is actually bringing people closer together and figuring out how you remove screens and how you encourage more human interaction, then reducing everything down to a summary. And this actually goes into, I think, what we were just talking about with AI, is if AI were to take all the information and say, look, I'm going to take everything we know about Neil. When he was born, I will put him in a generation. How he voted, I will put him in a political class. And instead say, no, this is what's important to Neil. What's important to Neil is to have a good job, to provide for his family, and to live a good life. I think that's something that we can all agree on, but that's not as exciting for any industry. And so until you meet those people and you realize those commonalities, it's difficult to say, well, everybody from California or everyone that was born in this year is the same. And those generalizations, I think, are harmful.